AB 2700, which is a very righteous bill. What I say is a very common sense bill, which says, number one, we're tired of paying too higher rates in California for our electricity. And we've had report after report after report that has told us exactly how we could reduce those rates, programs that aren't cost effective, mandates that we could reduce, many different things that we could do. We've seen those reports, but yet nothing's been done and our rates continue to climb. That has to stop. And so 2700 demands that we do a 30% reduction by just taking advantage of some of those things that have already been identified, as ways we could reduce our rates. But the other thing it does is something that is a long time in coming, which is it makes sure that our fire victims are fully compensated. For fires that happened before the agreement in 2019, before the Wildfire Fund was established, there were people who were devastated. We lost community members. We lost homes. People lost everything in these fires, in the Camp Fire, in the Tubbs Fire, in the Butte Fire. And people received some recovery, but they did not receive total recovery, which is when someone causes damage to you, when someone is the cause of damage to you, you should be able to get fully compensated for your loss. That's what happens in courtrooms throughout this nation. And PG&E was negligent. And when we look back on that, there were major things that were not done. They were ultimately held criminally liable. But one of those things was lack of maintenance of infrastructure, that C-clamp that caused that line to fall, that sparked that fire, that caused a conflagration that destroyed the town of Paradise and the Ridge communities and Concow and Yankee Hill. And when you do something where you're negligent, you're liable to pay and compensate people who you damaged. And the reality is, after everything that happened through the bankruptcy and ultimately through the payments out of the Wildfire Settlement Fund, only about 70% of that compensation was received by victims. And so 2700 says, okay, going forward, let's make sure that that 30% is covered. PG&E has now come out of bankruptcy. In the most recent reporting, they made $2.1 billion in profit. They're profitable. And they can absolutely make sure that they pay victims 100% of what they're owed, right? We're not asking too much here, man. We are really, really not asking too much for people who've been through everything and who've been through pure hell. And so this is a common sense measure. We made it through the first committee about a month ago, and a lot of these folks came down for that. And now we're in the Appropriations Committee. We had a presentation this morning, and we have bipartisan support for this. We have people that see that we need to do this. We need to move forward. I'm very heartened by that, and so we are hoping that we get out of this next committee so we can keep moving this forward. And another thing I want to say is right now I do want to change the language. We're working on some language changes, and a couple of things that we're working on. One, no more payments to attorney's fees. It needs to go to victims, okay? The other thing is, right now the way the language is, it's saying, hey, we want the PUC to report back. I just want the PUC to do it, I want the PUC to do it, and we are the legislature. We have the ability to direct them to do these things, and I just want them to come back, give us the 30% reduction, because we already know what needs to be done. In fact, in one of the reports, I think it was from the Department of Finance, but they're saying the PUC needs $11 million to do this. They need 22 positions to do what everybody's already identified. And now we have yet another study, the SB 254 study that's just come out. We have all the information. It's already there on what can be done to actually reduce your rates. Let's just do it, okay? And let's make sure that let's just do it. Compensate victims what they're owed. No more, no less, but what they're owed. And so, look, this is just a righteous, common sense bill. Again, I'm very proud to carry it. And I want to thank everyone, the survivors who are here today. And we're going to keep trudging forward. I like our chances. And let's pass this out of the Appropriations Committee. Please, 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 Appropriations Committee, pass AB 2700. Let's keep this moving forward. And so next, I'd like to invite up Will Abrams, a guy who's done a lot of work on this front with the Utility Wildfire Survivor Coalition. Will, please.
Thanks very much, and thank you, Assemblymember Gallagher, for your leadership for the communities in Northern California and around this bill. This is hugely important for wildfire survivors, but really beyond wildfire survivors. It's for all of our families and communities. Wildfires affect us throughout this state. And as Assemblymember Gallagher said, when a utility burns your house down, they need to be held accountable for full compensation to their victims. If it were an individual and that individual committed arson and burned down a home, that would be held fully accountable, and we expect that same amount of restitution when a utility causes the fire. I just want to provide, I guess, a little bit of context regarding how we got here and some of the statements that were made that landed us in this place now almost 10 years, and for many it is over 10 years, waiting for compensation for the fires. And I want to quote Bill Johnson, the former CEO of PG&E, eloquently. He said, "PG&E will fully and fairly compensate all eligible wildfire victims." That was in April of 2020 that he said that, right? And so here we are today in 2026. In a hearing in 2019 for the passage of AB 1054, there was an organization called Up From the Ashes, which was largely the representation of attorney groups. And they said that this will be a way to get fire victims fully compensated. Attorneys, legislators, everyone understood that victims deserve to be fairly compensated and compensated quickly. I want to just take a moment to also consider the analysis that was just come out from the Appropriations Committee. And so, as Assemblymember Gallagher mentioned, they're saying that it's going to cost $10 million. And of course, we think that that's too high. But that being said, it's a very small price to pay for allowing fire victims to be able to rebuild their homes and their lives. All of this is a reinvestment in our communities. And I also want to highlight the benefits of this that stretch well beyond that initial payment to fire victims. We wonder why we have a lack of insurance in this state, why we can't find insurance. Well, you don't pay your victims, you have vacant lots, and you have all sorts of problems that come from that. You pay your victims, allow them to rebuild their homes and their lives, you might find a little more insurance in this state. You might find a little more wildfire mitigation, allowing us to be able to maintain our lots. An analysis came out that to rebuild your house with improved wildfire mitigation standards costs an additional about 5% in terms of how you are going to be rebuilding your house. Well, an extra 5% when you're not being fully paid for your losses is a really tough thing to do. So all of these things have really ripple effects throughout the community because you aren't paying your fire victims. Lastly, I just want to provide a little context in the analysis of the report. One of the things that they said was that there was a dogged advocate who was pushing them to get amendments associated with this bill and pushing to strengthen the bill, pushing to get behind this bill. And I just want to correct the record from that analysis. This is not one dogged advocate. This is many advocates. This is hundreds of thousands of wildfire survivors who are pushing for this legislation. The people you see behind me are just representative of that larger group of wildfire survivors pushing for this. I do want to call out A special thank you to other organizing advocates of the Utility Wildfire Survivor Coalition who do tireless volunteer work. We are not paid lobbyists. We lose money every time we come to the Capitol, but this is just too important. I want to express a thank you to Cheryl Maynard, Tina Ressler, Jill Gottlieb, Doreen Zimmerman, Sydney Robinson, Ken Klassen, Natalie Manning, and hundreds of thousands of wildfire survivors that we all try to be representing here at the Capitol so that we can get fully paid, so we can support our communities and rebuild in a more resilient manner. Thank you very much. Thanks again to Assemblymember Gallagher for his leadership. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you guys for joining us, and I know we have some of, we have the victim advocates and survivors here today. So if you wanted to talk with some of them after here, but I'd be happy to answer any questions here at the end of the press conference. Yeah.
So, and this might be a question for you or for Will.
Yeah.
The Fire Victim Trust. I think that's a voice that a lot of wildfire survivors in this conversation wonder where they can stand in this. When I've had conversations with leadership over there, they repeatedly said they're not going to take a stance on it. They're not involved. What is, or have you had any communication with the trust? Do you think that they should have more part of this conversation to this?
I mean, I think that has been the case. They've kind of largely stayed out of it because they are administering that trust fund, and that's kind of how they've viewed it as, hey, we're administering, but that trust fund, by the way, is just, it has the 70%, that's all it has, right? And so what we're talking about is something separate, which is, hey, we need to make sure we get that additional 30%. Now, if we pass this legislation, and we're able to get it through, that might be one way to do it, is maybe perhaps it could be done through that administration fund. I think that might be a better question for Will. But however it's done, we just want to make sure that additional 30% gets paid out to victims. And we think there's a way to do that through the mechanisms that are already available to the PUC, bonding or requiring, as a portion of continuing to have, different access to things through the PUC, that the utility would provide that. And we know that the money's there, right? And it can be done without adding cost to ratepayers. This is something that the company can be responsible for, and there's many different ways that could be done. And I think maybe Will could probably get into more details with you on, but let's put that process in place, those mechanisms in place, so that we can finish out and fully compensate the victims. Any other questions?
You also mentioned bipartisan support for this bill. Has there been anyone on the Democratic side that's said that they're going to co-author this bill, or what does it mean by bipartisan?
No one yet that is co-authored yet. It's been Republican authors and co-authors. However, Democrat members have voted for the bill, and I anticipate that we will have Democratic co-authors come onto this bill too. I mean, it's definitely people who I've had conversations with who because it's not just me and my constituents who've gone through this. It's many people's constituents. Unfortunately, this is an all too present problem in California. It's why we need to do so much more on wildfire mitigation, and fuel reduction, which, by the way, is totally another issue, but it's got last place funding and may not even get any funding out of the greenhouse gas fund this year because we didn't sell enough credits. And meanwhile, high-speed rail is getting $1 billion, and we're going to shortchange wildfire funding? No way. That's ridiculous, and that should absolutely be reversed. Something that we're talking about right now. But we have got to get this right. We got to get the priorities right, and I think with 2,700, we can finally ensure, right, that victims get fully compensated. And we make that right, and we also do what we can easily do to reduce people's rates. And so, yes, I anticipate that we'll have bipartisans. We already have had bipartisan support on votes, but I think it'll also be in terms of co-authors as well.
Sorry to disrupt. Assemblymember Gallagher, so this is not just relegated to victims who are affected by PG&E. This is a statewide bill, or how do
It really is PG&E because the fires that occurred prior to 2019, and that's what this is really focused on, were PG&E caused utility fires. Well, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I can add that, you know, look, I think what's really important is that we set a precedent for how we compensate fire victims, right? So we certainly have been waiting a very long time, but we are certainly not looking to jump ahead in a line with other fire victims. They all need to be fully compensated, whether they were affected by PG&E, Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, it doesn't matter. They all need to be fully compensated, and our intent through this legislation is that we get fire victims paid who have been waiting since 2015, and we understand how that's going to be done. And that same thing applies to the folks in Southern California that have been burned out because of this SCE Eaton fire. We really need to set the precedent that victims need to be paid first.
And my last question: has there been a conversation with PG&E about this bill as far as getting compensation?
I haven't had direct conversations with them. I know that they've taken a neutral position on the bill, and so I mean, as far as we've gone here, they're not opposing the bill. And you know, look, I mean, the bottom line is, to me, it's just about doing what's right. You know, it's doing what's right by people. So I don't know exactly what their exact posture is with regard to the bill. I think, as Will pointed out, I mean, their former CEO said exactly this is what they would do, right? And so we're just holding that to account of what they've already said previously to ensure full compensation of victims. And again, I just think this, to me, there's an easy way to do that, right? I mean, we have processes in place that can help ensure that that is the case. Okay, thank you guys for being here and appreciate your time.